serve conveniently with across the board.
Denise says the completed project will be a video slideshow that she'll make available on her social media channels, including that of her organization, MMIW Search and Hope Alliance. Acclaimed Indigenous chef Sean Sherman is expanding his nonprofit to Montana. YPR's Ruth Eddy has more about his plans in Bozeman.
So we've got ground elk, onions, delicata squash, we just chopped it up real fine. It's got sumac, cedar, and salt in it.
Chef Rob Denise with the nonprofit Indigenous Food Lab is grilling at the kitchen of Fork and Spoon in Bozeman. Social enterprise restaurant run by the Human Resources Development Council serves pan-to-pan meals 5 nights a week, but also rents out its commercial kitchen.
There's no stress, obviously, you're not yelling at each other.
Tonight, the kitchen is being used for a pop-up dinner as a taste of what's to come in Bozeman. As Sean Sherman's nonprofit starts using the kitchen regularly sometime in the near future.
Our goal is to try to get access to children across the state and deliver them in this building.
Sherman's restaurant in Minneapolis was named JP's best restaurant in America.
Morning.
Morning. Highlights indigenous ingredients by removing colonial ingredients like dairy, meat, flour, and chicken. Tonight's
artistry into the plating, you know, and really take a lot of care of the ingredients that we're doing.
the elk's skewer is plated on top of a dark circle of sauce made from currants, topped with fresh nuts and drizzled into pine syrup. Sherman explains.
And then we're going to cook it on with some maple syrup and some water and just let it simmer for a long time so the water starts to evaporate, but it will absorb a lot of this fine flavor.
Megan Vincent was one of about 80 guests at the pop-up. She's a culinary arts teacher at a high school in Lewistown. She said the food was amazing and the braised bison and wild rice flan were favorites.
I really want the dessert recipe to see if I can make that with them. Just being able to make the dessert taste that good without using those standard ingredients of sugar and dairy would be a really great experience.
In Bozeman, I'm Ruth Eddy.
And this is National Native News. I'm Brian Bull in the KLCC studios in Eugene, Oregon.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation, funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Support by the Arctic Encounter Symposium, North America's largest Arctic policy event at the Denise Convention Center and Anchorage Museum, July 30th to August 1st in Anchorage, Alaska. Registration for this global conversation at arcticencounter.com. Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for over 40 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
Serves a farm-to-table breakfast, lunch, and dinner 6 days a week. Since opening, we have spent over $4 million with Arkansas farmers and producers. Coming in 2024, we are thrilled to announce the Brew Cafe will open a second location in West Little Rock. The new restaurant will be located in the newly renovated Breckenridge Village Shopping Center at the intersection of Rocky Pier and Interstate 430. Stay connected with us on social media using the tag @BrewCafe for updates. Brew Cafe believes in KABF and the power of community radio. We are proud to support Never Mind the Morning Show and the dedicated DJs who make it happen. Happy listening.
Hey everybody, it's Larry Hickson. Let's talk about it. Join us on June 2nd when our guests will be noted biographer of Miss Daisy Bates and the Maya celebration, Mrs. Janice Kearney. She'll be here to talk about all the developments associated with the Bates legacy and all of the history behind the
Southwest Little Rock and you are tired of hearing gunshots and speeding cars in our neighborhoods, then come to the Southwest Community Center on May 29th for a town hall meeting with city directors and police leadership hosted by the members of Arkansas community organizations. This is our opportunity to ask city leaders why it takes so long for the LRPD to show up when we call, and to discuss how we can get officers into neighborhoods on foot and bike so they can get back to doing real community policing. So come make your voices heard at the Southwest Community Center on Thursday, May 29th at 6 p.m. at 6401 Baseline Road.
Hey, listeners, this is Wade Rathke at KABF. We are a non-commercial, listener-supported radio station. We are able to stay on the air and offer unique programming because listeners like you become members and pledge $5, $10, or $20 every month to support us. This is the month to become a KABF member. Go on our website, KABF.org, and sign up today. We're not too proud to beg. We need you and we are you. Please support us now.
Hello, this is Mark Hurst, the host of Tectonic, covering our shift to a digital future, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. here on KABF 88.3 Little Rock. Tectonic is my talk show exploring how technology is affecting all of us. Through my interviews of authors and journalists, I'm spotlighting the risks posed by big tech platforms and what we can do about it. Join me on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. right here on KABF Little Rock.
Caring for a child under 5 isn't always easy, but getting support can be. If you're pregnant, a new mom, or looking after a child under 5, the WORK program is here to help. WORK provides healthy food, nutrition advice, breastfeeding support, and even referrals to healthcare and community services, all at no cost to you.
We can restrict my grocery budget and tell me how to make mealtime easier and healthier for my kids.
WIC is for working families, single parents, grandparents, real people just like you. Find out if you qualify and enroll today. Contact your local county health unit or call 1-800-235-0002. Because when families are supported, everyone grows stronger. This message is brought to you by the Arkansas Hunger Relief Alliance and the Blue and You Foundation for a Healthier Arkansas.
Bella Vita Jewelry and Gifts, located at 108 West 6th Street, in between Handle Barbershop and Six House Studios in downtown Little Rock. It's your one-stop shop for intentional gifting. Our focus is our handmade and custom jewelry, but we feature an array of other gift items too. We take pride in supporting other female entrepreneurs, local artists, and fair trade companies, and you will see this reflecting in our gift offerings. We are open Tuesday through Fridays, 11 to 5:30, and Saturdays, 10 to 4. Visit us in person at our shop or online at www.bellavitajewelry.net.
Acts like she wanna be free. I had a feeling she was loving somebody. 'Cause she sure ain't been giving it to me. And then I heard her say, life is much too short to worry. So I made up my mind today, yeah, to go out and find myself somebody, so I can get my children and give it away. See, the wall was paper thin in the motel that I was in, and suddenly an old memory of sound turned my world upside down. Oh yeah, baby, upside down, upside down.
Yes, you are listening to KABF 88.3 FM right here where you are listening to Community Voices. Every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10 a.m. we show up in some form to educate, to inform, to empower, to encourage, to protest, to do all kinds of things to make sure that we are doing what we need to do as community, for community, by community. So thank you so much for joining us right here. We were coming in hot with your girl, Denise LaSalle. We're going to be talking about her in just a minute. But before we go any further, I want to make sure that we pause for the cause, and that is to tell you how grateful we are for your presence in this space. We realize here at KABF 88.3 FM that we would not be alive were it not for you. And it's in all of the ways that you show up for us that make it possible for us to stay here, to have been here for 41 years this year. That is no small statement to make. So thank you so much for all of the ways that you are present. This is your girl, the Reverend Doctor. You can call me Denise, live in studio today, the pastor, Toney Orr. I want to make sure that he has an opportunity to greet us on this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I hope everybody had a great weekend. For those of you who did have yesterday off, I hope you had an enjoyable, peaceful, great holiday. Just want to thank, echo a sentiment that Denise just gave. I just want to thank all of you who support KABF. When I came in this morning and was going through my emails, and I received an email from our PayPal account, and oh my God, so many of you gave through your donations online, through PayPal, through monthly subscriptions, which increased. And I just want to thank you for the work that you do, for supporting what we do, and making sure that we continue to be a light, a voice in the community.
Sometimes I always forget to say that the phone lines are absolutely open at 501-433-0088. The phone lines are open at 501-433-0088. Call in and lend your voice to the conversation. You are greeted into this space every single Tuesday in the spirit of Sawubona. Sawubona, that spirit of oneness that binds us together, and that oneness is symbolized by our humanity. There's nothing that we can do to extricate ourselves from each other. So we got to figure this thing out. Got to figure out how to exist in a way that honors everyone's integrity and allows people to have control over their own bodies, and to be free and to be liberated and to coexist, so that we have the rights to the things that are important to us, and we don't stop you from having those things that are important to you, as long as they do not continue to harm and abuse my own body. And so we center Blackness in this space in the context of the human story, and all are welcome to contribute to the conversation. That's why the phone lines are open, wide open, at 501-433-0088. We started the conversation this morning with Denise LaSalle, and for me, she is a beacon of Black joy. And I'll tell you why. Number one reason why is because I'm named after her. My father was a huge blues fan, and every Saturday morning, it was the children's responsibility. I have two older brothers. It was our responsibility to clean the house. Now, we've been cleaning the house all week long because we have chores to do every single day. But it was still a ritual in our home to get up on Saturday morning, and the children would be responsible for cleaning the house while my mama and my dad were standing in the den, dancing in the middle of the floor, because we had one of those turntables that was inside of a piece of furniture where you roll the top back and then you could see the board, the turntable was down there. My dad would come on and he would put on blues and they would dance in the den, or they would just sit. He would sit in his lazy boy and she would sit on the edge like she was sitting in his lap, and they would just listen to the music. And so my dad loved Denise LaSalle in particular. I don't know why, probably because it was like a guilty pleasure for him, because it was this woman, because my dad was sexist, and so this woman, where he believes women are supposed to be submissive, it was something about this woman who was feisty enough, who had a mouth that he considered to be vulgar. It was something about her being able to stand firm in what she was doing as a talented singer, one from Mississippi. So he was in love with the singer, with the artistry of Denise LaSalle. And so my very name is Denise LaSalle. And there was one, I don't even know, I guess it was just serendipitous that my mom and I found out that Denise LaSalle was going to be performing locally in a club, a club, a venue on Ferris Street, which is historic street in our city and in the history of America, really. And so we decided that we were gonna go. And my mom and I went and we sat through the entire concert. It was my first time really experiencing Denise LaSalle. I was so excited. My mama was with me. And then afterwards we waited and waited because we wanted to see if we could have an opportunity to talk to her. And she was so gracious. She was talking to us like we were her best friends, like we were neighbors down the street. And so then we got a picture. I looked and I cannot find that picture. But the three of us took a picture. So it was a very defining moment for me to meet this woman who I was named after, and primarily because of her mouth. And so I played this song this morning, thinking about, we were talking about Memorial Day yesterday. I don't celebrate holidays, but on Memorial Day, if we want to have a conversation about the topic, I think about my ancestors who I memorialize on a regular basis. And so my dad his spirit just crept up in there. And so I was just thinking about Denise LaSalle, and I was going through some of her songs, and I came across Paper Thin, and I'm very familiar with Paper Thin because that's one of the ones he played all the time. And so I was listening to the words really just to honor the memory of my father, and realized that, I believe, because of the power of words, that we can apply them to different situations, that you cannot bind words to one particular definition or one particular understanding because of the fluidity of language. It's just not possible to do that. And so I love being able to take words from one thing and from one sector, from one content, from one context, and apply them to the next. And both of them make sense when you look at it through the particular lens that you're being asked to look at it through. And so I was listening to these words about Paper Thin, and there's no doubt about it that Denise LaSalle is singing of a relationship with a heterosexual relationship where neither one of them in the relationship is really happy with each other. Neither one of them. But they are not willing to have the real conversation. They're not willing to have the hard conversation. They're not willing to deal with the fallout of the conversation. They're not willing to deal with the consequences that come from the decision to have the conversation. They're not willing to do that. So instead they come up with their own ways to navigate the relationship, and it turns into both of them turning their backs on the commitment that they made through their vow to get married. And so they both have decided that I'm just going to figure this thing out on my own. And in the process of figuring out, I need somebody to come alongside me. I don't want to do it by myself. I'm tired of feeling lonely. I'm tired of feeling alone. I want some company on this journey that I'm on, even though it's an individual journey. And so they find somebody to companion them along the journey that they're having towards not having real conversations with their partner. And here she is, Denise LaSalle, in the room next door to her husband, and she hears his voice, because you recognize, it doesn't take long for you to recognize, shoot, dogs can recognize voices. So we know that we have the ability to do so as well. And so even though she's in this compromising position and he's in his compromising position, when she hears his voice, she knows exactly who it is. And tears couldn't help but spring forth from her eyes. And I don't believe they were tears of, oh my goodness, I'm about to get caught, or oh my goodness, he's cheating on me. I don't think it was that. I believe that the tears sprang forth from her eyes because now she has, all of a sudden, like a windfall, she realizes that she has neglected herself by not making the necessary decisions to free herself from a situation that was no longer feeding her. Because we get to the point where we are so content, we get to the point where we're like, oh, this is normal. We start saying it's God. We start doing all of these things that keep us in a situation when we know that we need to free ourselves, not wait for somebody else to free us, but free ourselves. And so that's what this particular conversation is about, these walls being paper thin enough for her to hear the voice, and the voice being recognized as her husband's voice, and then her having to deal with and reconcile with the decisions that are being made in that very moment between the two of them, and what that will mean for them. So that's what that the conversation is about on the song. And I usually don't cut music off, because as a musician, I know that the song isn't over until the last instrument has been silenced by itself. But for this, I was like, look, that's enough. I don't want us to get caught off guard. I mean, I don't want us to get caught up into what she's talking about, what she's dealing with, and how moral all of those things are. I want to talk about the fact that the thinness of the walls that we think are between, no, not that we think are between us, that we have built between, the thinness of those walls, and how we try so hard as a society to fortify walls that cannot, will not, shall not stand. Doesn't matter how long it is taking for us to dismantle and to eradicate and eviscerate these walls. It doesn't matter how long it's taking us. The point of the matter is the destruction is yet on its way. And as we continue to try to figure out and justify and humanize these walls, they continue to cause harm and trauma and continue to divide us. And in some cases, the trauma is so great that people can't make the necessary decisions that they need to make for themselves. Sometimes the trauma is so great we don't want to deal with the decisions because we don't want to deal with the pain. Sometimes we just tired. Some of us just tired of having the conversation over and over again, so we're not dealing with the things that have to be dealt with. But these walls that are so thin have to come down, and so we are going to have to realize our role in making sure we are tearing them down, because actually they're getting thinner and thinner by the day, if you ask me. And so they are ripe for being destroyed, and we can do that. So that's why I chose the song to talk about being paper thin. This world that we're living in with all of these lies and these myths that are paper thin, people can see through them, we can recognize them, we are coming for them, we are dismantling them. I wanted to talk about that particular role of the song, reminding us that what we think is dividing us, what we think is strong enough to protect us, actually ends up exposing us. And so that's why I wanted to choose paper thin as I was thinking about Denise LaSalle and my dad. And pause for Toney.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing we also have to realize is that who built the wall? How's the wall built, and what type of foundation this wall is predicated on? And so when it comes to people who want to restore the wall or want to tear the wall down, I think a lot of times we don't go to the foundation of that wall. And I think sometimes, even when we do, we try to stand on that foundation. I think you mentioned commitment or trauma or hurt, and we don't want to deal with it. And I think it's so important. I am a connect the dots person. I've learned to do that over the past few years, is connect dots. And sometimes to understand where you are, or understand where we are with this wall that needs to come down, we have to go back to the beginning and see, how this wall was put up. What was the purpose of this wall, and how do you go about dismantling the wall? And so I think that's something that we have to also think about as we're trying to remove these walls, remove these things that are hindering us as a society and as people.
So here is the tidbit for today. I actually chose it for today, May 27th in 1892. On May 27 in 1892, a white mob, angered by Ida B. Wells's anti-lynching editorials in the Free Speech and Headlight, destroys her Memphis newspaper office. She relocates to Chicago. Let me read that again. On May 27th in 1892, a white mob, angered by Ida B. Wells's anti-lynching editorials in the Free Speech and Headlight, destroys her Memphis newspaper office and she relocates to Chicago. Ida B. Wells was a journalist who began to dedicate herself. She was already a journalist. She was already fighting for justice. She was already confronting and combating the thin wall of injustice. She was doing all of those things already. But 3 of her friends got lynched. And once 3 of her friends were lynched, her focus shifted a little. And so when her focus, she was already doing the work, but her focus shifted. So she began now to fiercely attack the narrative that said that that Black men deserved to be lynched because that would be the appropriate response to their raping of white women. So because Black men rape white women, they should be lynched. And so this is the narrative that was put forth as to why it's okay to lynch Black folks. And Ida B. Wells is coming for that narrative. Caller, you're live on the air, KABF 88.3 FM. Thanks for calling.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm calling and I would like to say, you can wake a person up. You can wake up a person, but you can't wake a person up when they're in a coma. They have to wake themselves up. And it is a very sad thing when I analyze and look at my people, how hard we do try to please the enemy that prove they never will love you or care about you. It's like we are addicted to them or something. We can't even think about another world if it ain't under their rulership. We in bad shape when it comes down to this. And we know that the system is wrong. And we talk about how much we love Jesus and God and how much we want to do right, support a wicked system that we know 100% wicked. It's just sad, people.
Thank you, caller. I really appreciate you. So one of the reasons, so the caller is indicting us, particularly as Black folks in the world and particularly in America. There's an indictment against us on the table that we continue to support a system that we know deep down is wicked. We continue to support a system that continues on every front, in every turn, every chance it gets to remind us that it does not love us and our lives do not matter. And yet we continue to want to do those things that please the system. And he is frustrated by that and wanted to air and express that frustration. I too share that frustration. And I think that for me, the more I'm getting into meditating on and researching and reading about Black joy, I think that it is because we have forgotten on so many levels what it means to live in the Sawubona of Blackness. When I invite you into this space that's called Community Voices, I invite you into the spirit of Sawubona as oneness. All of us throughout the entire planet who are human, we are bound by that humanity. And so we live in the Sawubona of our humanity. But there's also, I believe, a Sawubona of Blackness, where we live into the oneness of the trauma that binds us, the oneness of the injustice that binds us, the oneness of the continued evil among us that pervades us. We live in that oneness, and that too is a Sawubona. And when I think about that, I feel like we have forgotten about the Black joy that comes with that oneness. And I had said I was going to do this every week, and I had already forgotten, but I'm going to lift it up even now. For those of you who want to call in and talk about a time recently that you have experienced Black joy, we don't we've gotten away from what that means and what it means on an organic level, because we weren't walking around talking about, come on, y'all, let's experience some Black joy. We weren't doing that. We were just living. We were just being. We were just being present with each other. We were offering ourselves to each other, and joy emerges from that every single time. And so yesterday I had gone out of the house and came back in, and it was my intent when I came back in to go walk, because I wanted to hurry up and walk before it started raining. But I was so tired when I walked back in. I just changed clothes before I even thought about it. And then I got a phone call. And the phone call was from my friend, said, hey, what you doing, D? I said, I'm sitting here working on this art, child. She said, you know what? I'm about to pull up. I said, what, are you about to pull up? She said, yes. She said, are you at, clearly, she had already asked me, was I home? She said, I'm about to pull up. I got the food. All I need you to do is open the door. I said, okay. So I put my walk clothes back on so I can greet her at the door. In through the door, she comes with energy, with presence, with community, with support, with encouragement, with inspiration, with admiration. All of that comes in the door just with her. That's why we are in relationship with each other. But she does have a bag of food. And she said, well, I just came from my girl Mary's house. Mary said, come over here and get you a plate. So I came and got a plate, and I was like, wait a minute, let me get enough for Denise. So she said, I decided to be to do you on you. I said, what you mean? Because you know you always showing up with food. And so she said, come on, let's break bread together. And that's what we did. Then I said, come on, let's go for a walk. And that's what we did. And then we said, come on, let's sit on the porch. And that's what we did. And so just in this spontaneous moment of coming together and saying, hey, let's just sit down and be together. And let's just allow whatever is going to happen in our midst together, that's going to continue to bind us. We didn't talk about no politics. We didn't talk about no religion. We didn't talk about relationships. We didn't talk about the moon. We were just chit-chatting about birds and bees and insects crawling, whatever it was. And that Black joy in that moment, there was no doubt about how it was binding us even closer together. We're not doing those kinds of things with each other anymore. And it's causing us to continue to walk away from, to turn our backs on, to pull up, to erect paper wall fence in between us, while we are fortifying the relationships that we are having or trying to foster with the system of whiteness. And so if we can get back to that, and some of us are trying to pull us together in those ways, I do think that would have an impact, because experiencing joy is a weapon that we can wield against this system of power that doesn't want us to exist. So if you know it doesn't want us to exist, it surely doesn't want us to laugh.
Yeah, two quick comments. And when Denise first asked the question, I think it was last week, about experience Black joy. And the one thing, people who know me well, most of the time will look at me and just tell me I'm silly. I can act real silly. It's in those moments where what others may be considered silly is a part of the joy, because in those moments there's laughter. In those moments there's no restrictions, there's no bounds. It's just in that moment you're just being you on both sides. And I think sometimes we need to be able to be in spaces where we can just be silly. It does not mean that it's something wrong. It just means that you're just having, just enjoying each other. The other thing is, on Sunday night, I taught a class at Arkansas Boys State in Conway. I did it last year, where I taught a couple of classes, and last year I taught 2 individual classes. This year I had the opportunity to speak to the whole delegation. And before I got started, I started asking questions. I started asking these delegates where they were from, and they were from so many different cities around Arkansas. And then when you talk about the walls, you talk about the foundation. And the first thing I started talking about is that I reminded them that I was 63 years old, born in 1961. And I said, in 1961, I would not be able to stand in front of you, because it's a diverse crowd of delegates. I said, it would mainly be all white. It would be all white in 1961. I would not be able to stand and talk to you about trying to encourage you of being leaders, trying to encourage you in organizing, trying to encourage you in protesting. I said, in fact, it was illegal. And I said, if I did, on the way back to Little Rock, more than likely I would have been stopped, and probably before I even got off the camp, probably before, they may have just came into the room, grabbed me, took me somewhere, and I would have disappeared. And I said that to them because, as I said before, you have to go. You have to be able to look at, especially with young people now, because so much is trying to be erased. You have to go and establish the foundation of why these things. And then I had them, so many were spread out. And it's amazing that when you go into rooms that are so diverse, people, ethnic groups, tend to gather together. So you had white delegates, you had Asian delegates, you had Black delegates, and they all just congregated. And what was so amazing, and you see this all the time, is that there would be these rows that would be just nobody there. But you would look over to one end or the other, and it would be, 4 or 5 white delegates here, 4 or 5 Black delegates here, and you would have that space in between. Well, that space in between is what you would call that wall, because I don't want to cross that wall. I've been taught not to cross that wall. The barriers is that wall, and so I had them fill in all the empty chairs. Fill in all the empty chairs all the way down, all of the seats all the way down. And then when they did, I looked at them and I asked them, as leaders, as the future, as 10 years from now, you're going to be the ones making decisions. Look beside you, and what do you see? Do you see a color? Do you see a sexual identity? What do you see? And whatever you see, that's what you're going to build on. So if you can get to a point where you see another human being, then that's a way to start being a better leader in this country. And so that's the thing that, as Denise is talking about with these walls, you can, whenever you have the opportunity, whether it's Community Voices, whether it's a radio show, whether it's activism, whatever, when you have that opportunity to try and break the wall down, to try and tear the wall down, to try to get rid of those barriers. I think it's something that we all should just think about, something that I think we all can do, but if it doesn't happen, then we continue to be where we are.
I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but I don't know. So let me say it like this. I'm not going to say what you said, but I'm going to say what I heard. And I felt that I heard that the walls that you're talking about are encouraging us to break down are those walls that are in between us socially. And so I want to, we can realize that we have more in common than we do that. That whole conversation about we're more alike than we are different. And so I'm going to make my way to you. I'm trying to make my way into friendship, into relationship with you. That's what I heard. And so I just want to say to that, that there is a role for that kind of work, that kind of tearing down of the walls. I want to support a more aggressive approach where we're tearing down the walls of policy and laws and legislature and stuff like that, which is not predicated on me liking somebody. So I don't have to be in relationship with a person. I don't have to like that person. I don't have to consider that person a friend for me to be able to fight for what is right for every human. In the existence of our humanity, what is our right to have? Clean water, access to health care, education, all of those things. So I no longer try to figure out how to change people's hearts and minds to have that conversation. We can dismantle the system, whether that conversation is fruitful or not. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation that you introduced, Toney.
Yeah, and what I was saying, I'm not saying that you have to like somebody. I'm not saying that you have to be in this relationship with somebody like them, and how we start to change these walls, these barriers. What I'm saying is that when you look beside a person, you have to recognize the humanity, and that humanity is not predicated on your sexual identity, is not predicated on your color of your skin, is not predicated on your socioeconomic background, it's not predicated on whether you're male or female. It's not predicated on that. What it's predicated on, what the most important thing is that whatever is affecting you is affecting me. Whatever policies and laws are affecting me are affecting you. Whatever environmental injustice that is affecting you will affect me. And that's what we have to do. We have to be able, to tear down these walls and these barriers. I always think about, people think that Ronald Reagan was the one that made the wall in Berlin come down. It wasn't Ronald Reagan that made the wall come down. It was people who decided that we're not going to live like this anymore. We're not going to live oppressed anymore. We're not going to live in a society that keep us in chains and locked down. And they went after the wall. Let's tear this down so that we can be free and we can be open. And I think that's where we get lost at. We're looking sometimes at one person to be the face of this, and that one person isn't. People look at Donald Trump as being the face of what's going on. He may be the face, but he's not the one making these decisions. It's elected officials. It's other people who are facilitating these decisions.
Let me see if I can get this caller. Caller, you're live on the air at KABF 88.3. Thanks for calling.
I respect the brother. I understand what he's saying. Our people as original people, have been fighting every people in, taught them, gave them what they needed, and everything else. We have did everything that anybody can do to try to be accepted. I'm not trying to tear down no wall with these people. I want to build a wall for righteousness for our people. I'm not trying to make you love me by communicating with you. I just ain't with that no more. I ain't with trying to love my enemy. Period. I ain't gonna do that. I done told people to shed blood all over this planet here. We talking about something that's much greater that we need to do and come together. Not talking about I'm gonna go over here and say, nigga, we decide all that. That ain't working. So if anybody want to try to go ahead on, but it don't make no sense to me. We got to get our own. We got this land, very land they call America, was our own people. This is really our land here. This is our land. So anybody want to deny reality, then go ahead. But I ain't with trying to communicate love, mix, and all that.
Thank you, caller. I feel like you speak my mind. Yes, I'm not. I think that relationships are organic, and I think that they are organic phenomena that happen over time. And I think that we are all ripe for organic relationship building in our lives with whoever that happens to be. And so I'm not opposed to any of that. But when I talk about justice and when I talk about reparations, it has nothing to do with those kinds of relationships. So I'm right in line with the caller. This is about fighting for justice. It is about fighting against the forces, whether they are whether they show up in the role of politicians, whether they show up in the role of city directors, whether they show up in the role of presidents, whether they show up in the role of however you show up in the role of dictating this injustice, then that's who I'm coming for and I'm fighting for. And I couldn't care less whether you like me or not. And so I agree with the caller 100%. And I do think that is part of the problem, though, caller, if I can just say. You used 3 words, a phrase that we find in the Bible. You said, I'm not interested in loving my neighbors. I don't want to love my neighbors. But in the Bible, it particularly explicitly tells you to love. It's a command that you love your neighbor. Like, this is what you are supposed to do. You're supposed to love your neighbors. And if you love your enemy, and if you're not able to do that, the suggestion is that you are not worthy of being a child of God. Or you are not worthy of you're not fit for the kingdom, because the kingdom requires that you love your enemy. So as long as Black folks in particular are still caught up in that kind of religion that subdues you in that way, that silences you in that way, that buckles you in that way, and if we can, as long as we are we continue to express interest in that kind of religious service, then it's going to be difficult for us to get to that place where we say, I'm fighting for what's right, not fighting for my friend, fighting for you to be my friend, and fighting for you to see me, fighting for you to respect me, fighting for you to embrace me, fighting for you to acknowledge me, fighting for you to recognize me. If that is what you are waiting for or if that's what you think the fight is, in order for us to be free, then we are not going to be free, because it doesn't happen that way. Because you cannot legislate people's attitudes towards you. So it doesn't even matter whether what they say. It's about what they do. And so we've seen so much in our own country, even now, how white people, the system of whiteness, I shall say, the system of whiteness, the system of white inhumanity will take those very words that we will have used for strength and for strategy and for tactics, like Dr. King's words about loving someone based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. That is one of the root phrases that they use to overturn affirmative action. And so we cannot think that the way to freedom is through right relationship with white folks. That's just not the way. Again, I agree with the caller. If that's the role that you want to play, you want to be working on relationships, that's fine. Nobody's saying don't do that. I'm just saying it's not pertinent to what we're doing over here, because we don't have time to wait for that to happen.
And I think that's why it's important that when you have the opportunity, just like this show, to express a different opinion, a different idea, a different thought process. That's why you have to be able to open up your mind and to embrace it, or to think about it, or to consider it. And I think that's what's so important. I will agree. One of the worst things that has hindered the growth of Black America is the religious ideas and thoughts of the Black church. Just going back to the what was said, the words "love thy neighbor," and so many people take that in the aspect of religion, that if you don't love your neighbor, then you're not worthy. Well, in reality, going back to what I said earlier, it's about humanity. It's about looking at injustice in terms of humanity. It's about, if my neighbor is harmed, if I live in a Black community, and I see that, like in Memphis now, Elon Musk wants to build this supercomputer.
There's one already there.
Yeah, but he wants to expand it using, that's going to use methane gas, that's going to take 150 megawatts of power, that's going to use 1 million gallons of water per day. So when someone looks at me and says, "Oh, you need to love your neighbor," hold up. First of all, how are you treating me? How are you looking at me? And so you're going to tell me that if I push back against you, that I fight back against you, that I rail against you, or I do things to stop you from doing this, that I'm wrong? No, that's the system of religion that says I'm wrong. But the system of justice, the system of right, the system of equality tells me I'm doing the right thing. And we have to be able to separate those things. I understand when it comes to this idea of religion that people have, well, that's the symbol and that's what's being taught. Well, just because it's a symbol, just because it's being taught, don't make it right. And people have to stand up and say, you're wrong with that. Whether they get mad, whether they accept you, whether they like you, or whatever. And that's one of the things that as Black people, we have to start learning. There's an evolution that you have to go. There's this process you have to go through to free. And we say this all the time. If you free your mind, the rest will follow. And you have to start working on that freedom.
I was looking at this conversation around the Nottoway plantation that burned recently in White Castle, Louisiana. And I was looking into it actually because a friend asked me, she said, Denise, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And I asked her around what, are any particular event, slant, like what's the perspective? And she was just wanting me to respond to people's response, because you have some people who are mourning the destruction of the plantation, and then there are other people who are celebrating the loss of it. And so she just wanted me to comment on just the conversation that's on some people's tables. And so I started thinking about the plantation, Nottoway plantation in White Castle, Louisiana, and really where my mind went. And that's what I'm going to trace my own thoughts. So I really didn't do what she asked me to do. I'm going to trace my own thoughts. My mind went to White Castle because when I saw the name White Castle, immediately I thought about the restaurant chain White Castle. I've never lived in a city that had a White Castle, but I've lived in cities that had a Crystal. And for me, Crystal and White Castle kind of have some kind of connection because of the small little square burgers that's their trademark. And so that's how I relate to White Castle, only through the eyes of a Crystal. I probably have had a White Castle if I was traveling somewhere, but I don't really remember. So this has nothing to do with the food and how the food tastes and whether or not I think their restaurants are clean. And I'm not concerned about that in the least. What I wanted to know is, was there a link between the people who settled White Castle and the people who, when their descendants, did they go on to start this business? That's what I wanted to know. Wait, let me get this comment from Ramen on Facebook. Where are my glasses? They say good fences make good fences. There's no greater joy than being in your own home, creating and celebrating as you please without interference from others. Hey, Ramen, this is from Ramen. Let me read it again. They say good fences make good fences. There's no greater joy than being in your own home, creating and celebrating as you please without interference from others. I've said this several times, and I will continue to say it. In this world in which we live, particularly as Black folks, meaning all members of the African diaspora, the diasporians, there's really only one place where you can have peace. There's really only one place that you could consider to be your utopia. There's really only one place that you could create your heaven in, and that would be your home. And so if you don't have peace in your home, we've got to be like Denise LaSalle, and there are some decisions that we're going to have. We're going to have to come to terms with the reality of our situation and begin to make decisions that are best for us and our bodies, and in essence, for those of us around us. Because when we care for ourselves, we are in a better situation, a better position to care for others. Oh, Ramen didn't mean to say good fences make good fences. He said good fences make good neighbors. Good fences make good neighbors. That's what he meant to say. And so I was trying to find out if there was a link between the descendants of, between the food chain, the restaurant chain, and the descendants of the people who settled White Castle, Louisiana. I was thinking about this. And so when I was looking it up and I asked the question, these days you got to ask the question kind of a certain way to get the answer that you're looking for. And so I finally found some configuration of words about White Castle and controversy and slavery and restaurant. Like I finally found some configuration of those words. And it said AI generated responses that are now coming up first. And I do read them first, and then I go on to read other entries as well. I don't just depend on it. But AI comes up and says, no, there's no link between the restaurant chain of White Castle and they didn't really even talk about the city. They were talking about the plantation. They kept talking about the plantation and the burning. They're not connected to the plantation. They're not connected to the burning. They're not connected to White Castle, the city. They said that. And it goes on to talk about the history and that it was built. It was founded in 1921. And so I stopped right there and I said, see, herein lies our problem in this world. Not only do we not want people to connect the dots, we don't want to have the story at all. Because for you to say that, no, this restaurant chain has absolutely nothing to do with slavery, but it was founded in 1921. And I start playing for you at the beginning of this show a song by a woman who was born in 1936. She was born in, 1934, because my mama was born in 36. She was born 2 years before my mom. 1934, and at 6 years old in 1940, she is picking cotton with her parents who are sharecroppers on a plantation. For you to say that my business, because it's not related to this plantation, had nothing to do with slavery, that is not the case at all. If you built a business while people were unable to work unless they were property, then you are related to slavery. If you're looking for your name to show up in the book and you can't find it, and that's your justification for not having a connection to slavery, you are misunderstanding what it means to live in story, because we are all coming in on a story that was already written before we got here, and we are playing roles in that story right now. So for you to say what was going on in 1921 was not affected by the system of enslavement, then that's just not true. And anybody, see, this is why I don't understand why you can't come up with a plan, where you can't come up with a formula for reparations, because all you got to do, not all you got to do, but one of the things you can do is all the people that started business while people were property, then you need to be taxed. Reparations, you need to be taxed for every one of those years up until now. There is a way that we could come up with these numbers if we wanted to, but we don't want to, because we don't want to have real conversation. Because when I'm asking this question about White Castle, and you don't want to say that you have anything to do with it, it's the same conversation as people who are white now. You are benefiting from this very system that we're talking about that's mourning the loss of the plantation, but you want to act like you didn't have anything to do with it because your name not on the birth certificate in a family that did have the slaves. But you cannot continue to act like your hands are off of it just because your name is not written in the book. Your heritage is in the book. Your history is in the book. Your lineage is in the book. And since we always talking about the Bible, that's usually how the Bible starts. When it's getting ready to tell a story about somebody, they go all the way back to the generations and bring you forth to now so that you can see how you got here. And we've got to have those kinds of conversations. And so when they ask the current owner of the plantation, Nottoway in West Castle, Louisiana, about the fact that he intends to rebuild, and this plantation is being used as a wedding venue. It's being used as an event center. It's being used as a place full of joy, which I'm not really ready to argue against right now. I just want to say, you want to talk about joy, but then you don't want to talk about the enslavement. You don't want to talk about that part. So you don't get to pick and choose what part of the story that you want to tell. And that is what keeps happening now. And so he says these words. He's like, well, I just think, quote unquote, we need to move forward on a positive note, and we are not going to dwell on past racial injustice. If you don't want us to dwell on past racial injustice, why do you want to re-erect a building that is rooted in racial injustice, past and present? You only want to talk about the positive. Help me understand somebody. The phone lines are still wide open. We still got at least 6 minutes for you to call in and help me understand at 501-433-0088 what positive note you can talk about from a plantation that enslaved people, that separated families, that turned babies into slaves and gave them as gifts to their children. You tell me what's positive that we can talk about this plantation. Help me understand, because I don't, and you don't want to have that conversation. Why? Because it's painful. It makes you feel guilty to know that you came from a people that blood runs in your, not the people that suffered the lynching, not the people whose babies were snatched from their bodies, not the people whose bodies were dehumanized on a regular basis, not the people who were raped. And so that's not what you feel guilty. You feel guilty because you come from the people who did it to them. And so I don't want to talk about it because it hurts my feelings. So I'm going to erase and dismiss their feelings so that we can laugh on this land where their blood still runs warm. This is why I'm with the Carla who says, I ain't interested in loving my enemies. I'm not interested in making you my neighbor. Am I interested in being human? Which means that if we are sharing space together and a relationship builds organically, absolutely. But for me to think that my life is about keeping you comfortable, keeping you from feeling guilty, keeping you from trying to figure out reparations, and listening to all of your lies, and raising my children up in all of these systems and depending on these systems to make me survive. No, I'm not doing that. And I don't care if Jesus says I'm going to hell. I'll be right there holding up the bloodstained banner of my people and standing firm on their behalf, because that's who I memorialize. And if we could get to the point that we felt like that, even if you weren't talking about my mom, what if you could put yourself in my position as a member of the diaspora, and say, oh my goodness, I know what it's like to lose somebody, but if I try to see it through that lens, my goodness, what can I do to help? How can I foster this justice? How can I bring forth this liberation? What can I do to use my privilege? That's the conversation we would be having instead of talking about Jesus said.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I'm very fortunate to be able to do is, as I go around this world and I see people, as I see, I know a lot of people have this distinction between Black people and African people, but when I see people of color, especially people who look like me from around the world, who do have these conversations, who do go out to try to make things a better society, who do rise up to claim, who do rise up for reparations, even though they're being pushed back against it. And, you know, just looking at what's going on with South Africa and how Donald Trump tried to intimidate the Prime Minister of South Africa, and he stood his ground to, basically to let him know we don't care about you. This is what we're doing in our country, and so I think once again, I think the idea of fighting for everybody, fighting for the justice, fighting for humanity, fighting for equality, it's not predicated, once again, on whether you like me or not. It's predicated on what's doing and doing the right thing. And you can take anything, any word, any book, any situation, and you can weaponize it and twist it to where you want it to look in a way that you want it to be. But just because you do, does not make it so. So once again, what we have to do is understand that not trying, if you love me, fine. If you don't love me, fine. But I'm going to continue to fight for what's right. And that, I think that's the attitude that people should have. That's the attitude that Black people should have. And that's just an opinion, y'all. That's mine.
And I feel like when we talk about this plantation, Nottoway plantation that is going to be rebuilt, and one of its uses is for it to be an event center, for it to be a wedding venue. And so people are coming out here to have this conversation, to enjoy their own joy, to experience their own joy in this place. I think about the pictures that are going to be taken on that day when you have a wedding. Usually there are lots of pictures that take a lot of time, and that really should happen, if you ask me, before the whole day of the wedding. But anyway, what are you going to say to your children? Because see, your children are going to be more,
it shouldn't be rebuilt,
be further along than you. So what are you going to say to your children when they say, mama, daddy, cousin, gender non-conforming parent? Isn't this a plant? Y'all had a wedding on a plantation? Like, who thought that was cute? Why would you do that? Like, do you not know the history? And so what you're hoping to do is keep that conversation from happening by erasing it all now. You're hoping that your child won't be able to find the stories about what the plantation was all about and what it was and what it meant to the people that got the 155 people who were enslaved on Nottoway. So you haven't seen that anywhere in the articles about the wedding venue. You have not mentioned any of the people who were enslaved there. You have not called their names. You have not paused for moments of silence. You have not erected a mausoleum. Not a statue. You have not have lit candles for them. You have not done anything to acknowledge your history of this plantation, because you're hoping to erase all that. But because we are, because you cannot erase us, your child gonna come and ask me, what are you gonna say? Get your words together now. What are you gonna say? Here's Raman saying, the foundation of South African puppet was Mandela. Wait, what now? The foundation of a South African puppet was Mandela. Caller, save me right now. Save me. Caller, you are live on the air, KABF. Yes, because we out of town. We're out of town.
Well, I didn't have nothing to do with slavery. I went back there. Your ancestors live on in your God, the same damn thing they did, and even worse than that. It's millions being destroyed, starving literally to death with plenty of food, and you get clean drinking water on this planet, and you age like your ancestors. That's bullshit. You know exactly what they did, even worse. There's more people suffering and dying now than that world back then. So all that attitude about you good white folks, you didn't have nothing to do with your ancestors live on in, you done the same damn thing.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, thank you, caller. At first, I thought he was talking about the black folks doing the same thing, but even worse. I'm like, wait a minute, I got confused. Look, y'all, I don't even know why I answered the phone. I was not even thinking, because we need to get into these last comments. Maybe we'll bring them back up on next Tuesday, but we are right here ready. Your girl Lola is standing at the door waiting to give you 2 hours of jazz. Do not touch that dial right here at KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. Thank you for tuning in to Community Voices. And this is Jazzy Tuesday. We start with the ladies. And so I'm going to get us started with Josephine Baker singing I'm Feeling Like a Million. We'll see y'all next time.
Oh my God. That is wonderful.